Yes, indeed, we're turning our attention to it's a different kind of security as well. But you heard about the herdsman settlement, Ruga settlement, cattle colony, whatever you want to describe it. Well, that is what we're focusing on now. We've got two gentlemen, as you may have seen in that welcoming slide. We've got Usman Baba Ngilzerma, who is the Secretary General of Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association, MACBAN. We also have beside him Honorable Jonathan Asake, who was a member of the House of Reps from 1999 to 2003. He was also a former special assistant to former President Obasanjo on National Assembly matters. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the program, and I hope I got those designations right. Let me start with you, Mr. Asake, on this matter about settlement. We've heard the government. We know that this is a challenge. The country wants to address this. The government is coming up with a position which they think will solve this problem. What is your impression of it? Is it the right step to settle this matter that is an age-long challenge to the country?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. The issue that is right now on the front burner again is the issue of Ruga settlements. And this issue came to the fore when an announcement was made, according to the reports, by the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Alhaji Muhammad Umar, to the effect that the federal government plans to establish what they call farm settlements or Ruga settlements, strictly for the Fulani herders across the country in all the 36 states. By his announcement, he also said that the pilot project will take place in 12 states, and in each of these states, that 6 of such settlements will be established in each of the states. A minimum of 6 of these settlements will be established. And so one kept wondering, we started in the 7th Assembly, there was a bill that was proposed in the House, and that bill at the National Assembly, and that bill sought to establish a commission for grazing routes and grazing reserves. And that bill suffered a setback because it didn't have the necessary acceptance by the Nigerian people, and so it suffered a setback at that 7th Assembly. And so again we had another coinage that it was cattle colony. And cattle colony, what was cattle colony again? They explained that, well, it is herders together, put together, and it is the same thing, the same old wine in new bottles.
Mr. Asake,
and so we have continued to move on.
Mr. Asake, my apologies for butting. I understand. I know you're trying to give us a background, historical perspective, and we appreciate that. But I'm just looking at time so that we could make the most out of it. So could you tell us, do you or your group oppose this settlement, and why?
We certainly oppose. I'm here representing the Middle Belt Forum, and we are totally opposed to the establishment of these so-called Ruga settlements. And just like I've said, it is still bringing in through the back door the failed grazing reserves and the cattle colonies. So we now have these Ruga settlements. It is not only in the Middle Belt. The Southwest governors met, and they have rejected it. The Afenifere met, and they have rejected it.
Can you hear me? Tell us why. Why do you reject it?
We reject it because we feel that that is a way government is going to take over lands from the ancestral lands, from the owners, from the indigenous owners, and give it free of charge to a particular people.
All right. Let me bring in Mr. Ngilzerma on this one. Mr. Ngilzerma, could you talk to us about this? Because, certainly this will raise concern for you. Do you think this is a question of misconception, or is he saying reality?
Well, Chamberlain, thank you for having me first. Is a gross misconception. You see, this rural settlement model is a component part of the livestock development transformation plan that is being implemented under the Office of the Vice President. It's a component part of it. All must agree with me that the crisis we are facing today has reached it has become a multidimensional crisis in the country. So also the approach to be used in solving this crisis must also have to be holistic. So in the desire of the federal government to be holistic, that is why it is coming up with the rural settlement model. And this is a rural settlement model for the herders. And not only the Fulanis are herders. If you go to some parts, if you go to the southern Kaduna, where my brother is coming from, you still have some natives who are also herders. If you go to Plateau, for instance, you have the Yargam and other groups who are also herders. This is a settlement model that was intended for the herders in the desire of the federal government to come up with an economic solution of solving this crisis. This is an integrated settlement that will bring about the production of pasture grass, water, schools, markets, meat processing, milk processing, where it will tap the potentials in the livestock sector of the economy. This is something that if it is done at a given time, it will create a lot of employment because of the potential the livestock sector has in the country. So you see, it's a misunderstood concept to some people, because governors are the custodians of lands in their state. They are also the custodians of security. So the lands under the states are under the powers of the state governors. This model is a trial. It's going to be tried in 12 states and see whether it will work or not. Even we, from the side of the herders and the association, we have our reservations. But because we are like a drowning man in the river who is offered a double-edged sword to hold, he can hold. Let's see whether this model will work to address the problems of this crisis in this country.
Well, Mr. Ngosama, let me put this question in. Pardon me for that. I mean, it may sound good, you know, the way you've put it out there, but haven't seen different regions or some groups in the country raise strong reservations rejecting it. Don't you think that if they go ahead and set it up with these rejections not addressed, one, it will cause more problems? And secondly, why do you think then that they are all opposing this? Because of this concerns that they've raised. Aren't you going to, is your group or the authorities not supposed to be doing something to address those concerns rather than appear to dismiss them with a wave of hand?
Well, Chamberlain, I agree with you that if it is established in a place where the people and the government are not interested, it will definitely become a problem. But it is not going to be implemented. It's optional. Those governors who intend to have it will have it. Those that don't want it, they will not have it. Simple. If Benue doesn't like it, so it is for Benue. It won't get it. It is intended for those states that are interested in having it in their state. And mind you, we have guaranteed grazing reserves in most of the states of the northern part of the country. Even those states that have accepted the regular settlement to be established in their state, those settlements will be established in those designated grazing areas that are covered by law, set aside for grazing by law. They are going to be established there. So I don't see any problem coming from this. But those that have fears, well, we can understand their fears. Let them not have it. Simple. It's a trial. We want to try and see whether it will work in solving this problem or not. Simple. Even we, from the pastoral side, I told you we have our reservations, but because we are like a drowning man in the river who is offered a double-edged sword, we grab it because we want to see whether it will work, whether it will help in solving the problem, because we always believe our members are at the receiving end of this crisis. You see how the crisis have assumed a multidimensional status in the country today, to the extent that the approach has to be holistic. We have to appreciate the federal government for coming up with the livestock transformation plan in the country, and this is a component part of the livestock transformation plan in the country. We are not imposing it on states. I don't think the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is imposing it on states that are not interested in it. It has requested for land from those states who are interested, and they have offered land from the grazing reserves for the Riga settlement to come and be established, and it's a trial. We want to try it and see whether it will work in solving the problem in the country. All must agree with me that the crisis have assumed a multidimensional. So we all have a duty towards working to solve this problem. In the association, we have reaching out to investors from within and outside the country in our effort of getting solution. We have also written most of the state governments to concession some of the grazing reserves to the association, so that we can work with some private sector to commercialize those grazing reserves, so that the herders will be paid for grazing.
Okay, Mr. Ndesama, just a minute, we will hear you, but Mr. Saki, just hang on. We'll come back and get further response before we wrap up in the moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Mr. Saki, you heard him there saying that government is not imposing it on anyone. If any state don't want it, then they will not have it. Does that satisfy or address the concerns that you, all the Middle Belt, or any other region may have?
Mr. Chamberlain, you see, there is an adage in my place that says that falsehood, has a very long tail. No matter how you dress it, it will always show up. From the reports I read and from contacts I've made, just using the example of Benue State, the PAMSEC of the State Ministry of Agri was contacted for this proposal from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. And they clearly told them that there is no such land for Ruga settlements. And today, what I read from the reports, that 3 local governments' work has begun on these Ruga settlements. And what is Ruga? Ruga is a Fulani word. It is not a word in Baju or any other language. It is a Fulani word strictly. And this Ruga, let Nigerians know clearly, just like we have estates here in Abuja, where estates are built for people, this Ruga is a deliberate attempt to build estates strictly for Fulani people, using the taxpayers' money. And if you are talking about establishment of Ruga, let me come from this way. Just take a train. I've always taken the train from here to Kaduna, from Abuja to Kaduna, because of the incessant kidnappings going on. And when you take a train, you will see what you call Ruga, settlements of Fulani everywhere. If you go all over the nation, you will see settlements of Fulanis. So what settlements, again, is the government proposing? And the government is saying that this will bring about peace, that this will now settle the herders-farmers clash. Let me even take it from there. Farmers-herders clash. I don't think there's even such a thing as farmers-herders clash. It is invasion of communities within the Middle Belt and the southern part of this country that has been taking place, where children and women and old people are being killed, and nobody has been arrested, nobody has been prosecuted, nobody has been convicted up till now. And to add salt to injury, to now say that strictly these communities are going to be created within indigenous communities, where only Fulanis are going to be settled, in the pretext of saying they are going to be settled to rear cattle. I don't think that is true. And let me just say, to go back to what my brother just said here. Yes, I'm from Kaduna State, from Zangon local government. We have what was established in 1987 as the Kachia Grazing Reserve in the then old Kachia local government, which comprised of Zangon Kataf and Chukun local government, Kajur local government, and Kachia local government today. Now, that grazing reserve has been changed to Laduga. Laduga is actually a Fulani word. And no indigene is there. The land was taken over from the indigenes. No indigene is there. And that place is a big town now with big buildings going on, big hospitals, big roads. In fact, the last exercise of voters registration, two registration machines were there, where the whole local government, you will find only one machine that was there for the rest of the local government for the indigenes. And today, they are craving, they have a district head, and they are craving for an emirate. And let me tell you what will happen tomorrow. It's just a model of what is going to happen tomorrow in this country when these settlements are established, that you will have state constituencies established all over the nation strictly for the Fulanis. state constituencies in the legislature and other political structures. That is the intent. And I stand to be corrected. And let me just give an example here.
All right, Mr. Honorable Asake, let me take this to Mr. Angelzema at this point. How do you react to some of these things that he has said, especially the fact that the word Ruga is a Fulani word that's the plan is to replicate that all over Nigeria? How do you think, how do you see people receiving that, especially in the light of what's going on in Benue?
Well, you see, I don't want to go into issues that we are not here for. I can only talk on the Ruga. The word Ruga is, you can call it a Hausa word or a Fulani word, but what it means is a rural settlement, ordinary rural settlement. This is new. It is evolved by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture as a new concept of settlement in order to address this continuous movement of the herders that is giving the country serious problem between communities. This is intended in good faith. I told you earlier, not only Fulanis are herders. This is a settlement for everybody to come and stay. And those states that have interest in having them can have them. Those that have no interest in having them, I don't think anybody will impose it on them, because the state governors are the custodians of lands in their state. The state governors are the custodians of security and education in their state. You cannot do anything, even the federal government cannot go and start to do something in a state without having the consent of the state governor before the federal government can use the land of the state governor. We have grazing reserves that are gazetted. Who gazetted them? They are gazetted by the state government. So they become designated areas for grazing. So I don't see any problem in this issue, unless, of course, that if somebody don't want to see anything good in what we are doing, so he is free to say his mind, he is free to vent out his sentiment and whatever. But if not, as Nigerians, as reasonable people, as educated people, we must learn to work together. I agree with Senator Sheikh Husani, who says the federal government must try to facilitate a comprehensive intercommunal peace plan and MOU, so that we can have better understanding of ourselves. You see,
okay, Mr. Angelzema, one moment. Let me just ask you this right quick. These settlements, cattle breeders are business people. They are running businesses. Are they going to be paying to occupy these settlements? Or is it something that they're just going to occupy without paying?
No, it's intended to be commercial. It's intended to be commercialized. I told you earlier on, even from the association, we have reached out to most of the state governments and request them to concession some of the grazing reserves for us, so that we can look for investors who will come, so that we can commercialize the grazing reserves for the pastoralists to come and say, the days of
Mr. Angelzema, these bodies, these establishments, these settlements will be set up with taxpayers' money. Now, you are going to occupy public facilities built with taxpayers' money without paying. Of course, naturally, people should be concerned about that. So how do you return the investment of government? Is there any plan for your association and members to return the investment?
The taxpayers' money is used to construct roads in the country that are used for commercial purposes, and people that are using the roads for their own personal benefits. They don't give government anything. Government is spending huge amount in construction roads, maintaining them, constructing bridges. Who is paying the federal government for that? These are services that are supposed to be provided by the federal government. A lot of other services, people enjoy a lot of other services. Today, in 3 years, the crop production side of agriculture has enjoyed over 300 billion intervention, with nothing going to the livestock, with all the potential the livestock subsector has. in the economy. So if this livestock subsector can be developed, one can imagine the huge investment this thing will bring into the country. Can imagine the amount of employment this thing will bring into the country. Today, who are the beneficiaries of the cow? They are the southerners and the easterners, because all the value chain related benefits of the cow are there. The herdsman is being paid meager amount for his cow. He's not paid for the value of his cow. He's just paid meager amount, while the entire of the value chain aspect is being enjoyed by some people in the south and the east, because they sell the blood, they process the bone, the skin, everything. The herdsman doesn't get anything.
All right, then, Mr. Ngozema, let me ask you, Honorable Asake, how do you respond to this?
I have said it here. You see, he kept making reference to Benue State. And in Benue State, right now, I say 3 local governments, from the reports, 3 local governments, work is already ongoing in the establishment of these Ruga settlements. And even against the governor kicking, who is the governor, and he kept making reference to the Land Use Act. Yes, land is invested in the state government, but no reference was made to the state government. When he rejected it, when the state governor rejected it, because the people, have rejected it. And mind you, there is an existing law that was made by the State House of Assembly in Benue, and the law that prohibits open grazing and establishing ranches. That law is still there, is still in force, made by the state government. But nobody made reference to that, even when the people of the state said they don't want Ruga settlement. I don't know if democracy and leadership is about the people. Who are the people in Benue State? They don't want this Ruga, and the same voice has been echoed all over the country about this Ruga settlement. And so that is why I'm saying, from experience of what we have in Kaduna State, we have this establishment of what we call a grazing reserve. And these Rugas, and they are now already craving for an emirate, and tomorrow it will be either a state assembly seat or whatever. So it is to replicate this all over the nation, so that what people call today as Fulanization agenda will really take place, where Fulanis will be formed in colonies, a kind of recolonization of Nigeria by the Fulanis. That is what is going on. And so where in all the 36 states of the Federation, that Fulanis will be forced on the people, on indigenous people in each of the 36 states by government, without following law, without following due process, without following procedure, and then establish this. And now let's talk about the 100 billion that was given.
The thing about this, gentlemen, is that we're out of time. So, but what we're going to do, we'll have to get back to both of you and revisit this matter. Let's try next week, but we'll have to work something out with both of you and see how we can continue on this conversation, because we need to ensure that people, number one, understand this, come to a solution, communities, people work together to see what is the best step going forward. So, gentlemen, I've got to thank both of you for coming on this morning, Honorable Jonathan Asake and Usman Baba Ngozema, SecGen of MACPAN, and Mr. Asake himself is a member of the Middle Belt Forum. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on. We'll get back to you and work out what we can do probably next week, so we can get more into this, because we better scratch the surface, really. So we'll be back in a moment. Join us again.